Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. I wanted to start with something that would grab your attention. But before I do that, I want to give you an example of a good social practice in employment. I'm neurodiverse. I have ADHD. My brain is a bit like a fishing net. It has fish in it that you can eat, but it's full of a lot of detritus. Polystyrene, ropes. They can be repurposed and reused in good sustainability practices. But the thing is that I have to learn, and I'm constantly struggling with focus. It has not impacted my career. I've always worked for an organization that understands and has encouraged me, and I found understanding myself and using ADHD's certain behaviors to add value and creativity to the role that I take. So I'm giving anybody permission, if I start wandering, because I think when I speak, into something that you're thinking, where's she going with that? You're allowed to stick your hand up and saying drifting, okay? Right, let me start. 252 weeks to 2030. That's not very long, that's only 5 years. You must have heard about 2030. It's the year where we wanted to keep under 1.5 degrees global heating. It's the year that the Sustainable Development Goals were meant to be achieved, or pretty much on the way. It's a big commitment. There's lots of talk, negative and positive, around the world. Let's have a look at some of the things that are going on in this region that are looking at these different things and where we're progressing. If we look at Saudi Arabia, Oman, the UAE, Bahrain, and Qatar, they all have 2030 visions, and they've all made commitments to be net zero by 2050 or 2060. By 2030, a lot of them have committed to reduce GHG emissions by about 25%. Are we on track? There's a lot of work that's going on. In terms of the financial sector where I work, there's interesting things that are coming out of the banking regulators that are related to disclosure, climate scenario analysis work that needs to be undertaken, bringing sustainability into the financial sector. There's a big project with the banking regulator in Saudi Arabia that I sit on a couple of the work streams there that are looking at sustainable finance products, developing a national taxonomy, and also what disclosure looks like and ESG risk. In the UAE, central bank is asking banks to look at things like managing effectively climate-related financial risk, and embedding different behaviours or actions into banking business. Climate scenario analysis, putting a price on the risk of balance sheets. That's also happening in Oman. And Central Bank of Bahrain are going forward with the new IFRS standards on climate disclosure, and the S1 and S2. So there's a lot of change going on. Environmentally, the issues that we're facing in terms of sustainability in this region are things like extreme weather. We all know about the floods that happened in Dubai and across other Emirates, which wasn't actually communicated as much, but we know that was an issue. In Saudi, floods. In Bahrain, floods. Cyclones in Oman. Extreme heat. Heat's a big problem because we rely a lot on the construction industry to develop the country. Extreme heat with humidity affects lives. And there's a place in a coastal area in Sudan that is affected so much by extreme heat that it can't support human life. These are some of the things that are really quite worrying. I ponder, because I started back in 2003 to get interested in sustainability, And I was extremely fortunate. I want to give you just a little bit of background, and then I can talk to you next about where I think where we're making an impact and where we're growing. But back in 2003, I got this interest in sustainability. It was pretty much called CSR back then, but I was working at the DIFC, and the governor then said to me, Belinda, go away and learn about sustainability and come back and teach us. I said to him, well, what do you mean? Can I go on a day course, or can I go and study it? He said, you find the course that you want to do, and we'll pay for you. I went to the Cambridge Institute of Sustainability Leadership, and I studied sustainable business. And I came back. It was like a light had gone on in my life. I was 40. I was the first woman in my family to go to university at 40 years old, and I had found my thing. Sustainability is my passion, and it has given me the strength and the drive to overcome stonewalling and ignoring and derision. Not so much nowadays, but right back then. I came back from university. I wanted to change the world, and my former colleague down here will know that people just used to look at me and think, oh God, there she comes. And they tried to get away from me. It was a bit like, oh, she's going to start talking about, that stuff that's not relevant to us. It's really interesting how sustainability has developed over the last 20 years. And now there's consultants and consultants and consultants in the region that are all of a sudden sustainability experts. But nobody's an expert because it's vast. But what we can do is find areas where we can work towards making a difference. So I'm going to use where I work, the financial sector, because I can actually talk about some of the changes that are taking place within an organisation. The reason I want to do that is because we have faculty here and we have students, and I want you to think about how sustainability can be embedded into so many different roles. So whilst I sit in the sustainability team, I work very closely across the entire bank, and sustainability fits into all sorts of roles. In HR, sustainability is about being a good employer, diversity, equity, inclusion, supporting women, making sure that you're a good employer with good policies and fair practices, such as fair pay, health and welfare, career development. These are things, so sustainability is an important part of HR. If I look at compliance, I work with colleagues that need to understand what regulations are coming out that affect the financial sector related to climate and sustainability. And it isn't just about passing it on to somebody else and then saying, have you done that? And we'll send it back to central bank. No, it's about learning and understanding the different issues. If I talk about the corporate and wholesale banking, it's about looking at your customers and the industry that they're in and helping them think about how they could transition to a different way of producing, for example, energy. So could an oil and gas company transition to a renewable energy company, and what sort of financing would they need for that? This is where banks can start playing a role in helping clients change the way that they do business towards a more sustainable future. If I look at the property team and the facilities, it's about using, obviously, things like energy efficiency, waste reduction. In a bank, maybe energy efficiency, okay. Waste, there's not an awful lot. I mean, yes, there's paper, but if you look at your loan book, and this is where Scope 3, and I'm sure that some of you have heard about Scope 3. For a bank, it's about what is the impact of the clients that they're providing finance to, and are those clients damaging the environment or undertaking unfair social practices. And then we have to go back and report and look at that and then see how we will help those clients. So in a bank, sustainability, and a lot of people used to say to me, well, how's that relevant to me? It's changing, and the regulators and the professional groups, not just the financial sector, but professional groups are understanding and recognizing the need to embed sustainability. You can't just have it as a side thing that's over there. It needs to be embedded within roles. It needs to be embedded in the way that you bring people on board. It has to be embedded into the output of your organization and the way that you behave. I think that the challenges, and I will go back to the financial sector again, and what we're finding is it's the lack of knowledge. Because this is such a new area that there's still, the regulators, for example, are moving ahead of the banks. Unless you're an international bank, the regional banks are scrabbling to catch up. They don't have the experience and the knowledge that they need. So training, education is vital. And that's where I think in universities, there can be such a fantastic opportunity because you're preparing the future generation. So sustainability within the different courses and the different degrees is vital, and it needs to be relevant to those subjects, not a standalone thing over here. You could become a sustainability professional, that's a different thing, but embedding sustainability is very, very important. John Elkington is my hero. John Elkington is known as the godfather of sustainability. He's the man that came up with people, planet, profit. The triple bottom line. We have to perform well in the social, the environment, and we need to make a profit. All companies need to do that. He changed it recently and he said it should be people, planet, and prosperity because of the way things are going at the moment. We know that we're behind on a lot of the different targets that have been set for 2030 and beyond. But I want to ask you to think about this. If we could imagine a world where we have a regenerative economy that's built on circularity and uses the Sustainable Development Goals as the pole star to guide us, I'd ask the question, is popularism of government, Trump for a start, is he meant to be there for a bigger purpose than what we realise? Is he and his other popularists, the other chap, the man in, sorry, I'm terrible, Argentina, are they going to help achieve a regenerative economy by breaking down a decades-old political system and economic system that no longer works? We need to think about circularity. We need to think about regeneration. We need to think about human innovation. The 2020s is meant to be the decade of innovation leading up to 2030 to help us come up with the solutions that we need so that my generation doesn't steal the future of all of you, and that you can learn and understand about sustainability. My vision for the GCC is that there is a world where there's fairness and trust and equality. Equality doesn't mean to say that it has to be right the way across the world, because we have a global north and a global south, and we have to be pragmatic about that. But it's about fairness, it's about safety, it's about food security, it's about longevity. My vision for you is to gather and learn and understand the challenges that we're facing, and that you can take on and work with my generation to go forward and have the future that you need, Sustainability as longevity, sustainability in social fairness, sustainability in a strong and undamaged environment, sustainability where biodiversity systems aren't broken. I'll leave you with that thought. Thank you very much for your time.